together, but how is it in relationship we're able to dive deep and actually be neighbors? If you are here as well and you are either a middle schooler or a high schooler, now is the time. The youth group leaders are waiting as well. If you would please, at this time you can stand and see them in the back as you all go to the youth area. Let's thank God for our youth. So here's a brief week 1 recap. So we looked at 3 steps of what we call a multi-ethnic miracle, right? It came out of Acts chapter 2, and beginning at verse 1, we saw that, according to the scriptures, when the day of Pentecost had fully come, they were all with one accord in one place. So we repeated that and said, first component of a miracle in seeing people from different backgrounds come together is they have to be on one accord in one place, right? Their hearts, their minds, their beings in one place. Then we saw verse 2, and suddenly there came a sound from heaven. That wasn't by accident, as Jesus had instructed the disciples in chapter 1 of Acts after he was getting ready to rise and ascend to heaven. He told them, look, I need you all to go away, get in one accord, and after that, power is going to come to you. So you see, this is a fulfillment of Jesus speaking to the disciples when he told them that as you go away and get on one accord, as you pray and as you seek after me, then there is going to be something miraculous that is going to take place. Something is going to happen. A sound then came from heaven. And last week we talked about that second component, or that second step in this 3-point multi-ethnic miracle model, is we see that when we get on one accord, God responds. Right? Now, after the sound came from heaven and they were given power from on high to be witnesses, then we see that they couldn't contain it and they had to go out into the streets and let people know. And we saw that if we take a look at this map briefly, we see that there were people that at that time, because they were located in Jerusalem, there were people from all over the region that were coming for that Pentecost festival. And also some that had stayed over for Passover. But it was by no accident that God chose that time to give people the ability to speak other nations' languages, because they were all in one place, ready to receive. And so we see that there were people, and we take a look at the map, you see Arabia is Saudi Arabia. When you see Babylonia, think modern day Iraq. You see Iran over here. You see Italy. You see modern day Turkey. You see Syria. You see Egypt. You see Cyrene. So you see Africa over here. And we kind of talked about that for a little bit. Just showing that just around 40 or 50 days after Jesus ascended to heaven, that the gospel was actually getting spread to Africa. So that's, some of us know that when we look at some of the current thoughts of, Christianity is just a white man's religion, we have to go back in history and understand really the truth of the matter. Okay? So in all of these places, we find that from all of these places, these people were coming, and that the gospel of Jesus Christ was able to be spread because Peter got up, the one that had betrayed Jesus, and said, these people that are speaking in these different languages, because some of the haters was accusing them of being drunk, said, that's not it. But there was a prophecy that was foretold that said that there's going to come a day when God is going to pour out his Spirit on all flesh, capital A-L-L, on all flesh, and that you're going to see miracles and you're going to see people come together. You're going to see people be united. Now, when we consider the early life of those believers, we'll look at Acts chapter 2, verse 42. And it reads this. And they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship, in the breaking of bread, and in prayers. Then fear came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were done through the apostles. Verse 44, now all who believed were together and had all things in common. Somebody say all things. All things in common. 45. And sold their possessions and goods, and divided them among all, as anyone had need. Verse 46 says, so continuing daily with one accord in the temple, and breaking bread from house to house, they ate their food with gladness and simplicity of heart, praising God and having favor with all people. Check this out. And the Lord added to the church daily. Somebody say daily. Daily those who were being saved. So we see this model of multi-ethnic unity clear in just months after Jesus had ascended. So now, with so much history in between that time and now, this message series in a real way looks at how do we get back to the heart of the church that Jesus Christ intended. And that's what we're going to explore and express today. There were three things, and preparing to invite our panel up at this time, there were three things that the early church did. And you have a chance, you have your electronic device, it's okay to take it out. There's something that's called a discipleship lifestyle model. When there are three areas, if you will be a balanced and a healthy believer, or you will be a balanced and healthy group of believers or church that you engage in. The first is up. So what is my relationship to God? How am I honoring Him? How am I spending time with Him? How am I worshiping Him? Then the second is in. How am I spending time with other believers? And then lastly is out. How am I allowing those two things that just gave me power, strength, and life to reach the world outside? And we see that in the life of the early church, that they spent time with God, they spent time with one another, and they spent time getting the word out. And what happened? Then we find that daily people were added to the church and added to relationship with Jesus Christ. So now I want to take a moment. This week, we are looking at the Asian American community. And every week, this week and then the following weeks, we're going to have panel discussions from different communities. And I just want to take a moment to thank our panelists and to ask them to come on stage at this time. Why don't you all give a hand to our panelists? Ashley, if you could bring those 4 boards that are up on the floor over there. So much. Let's give another hand to our panel. So first, understand that in the United States, Asian Americans represent at least 20 plus different nationalities and ethnicities. So understand that even within the Asian community, there is a broad range of experience, broad range of geography, broad range of stories. So what I want to do first is I want to have our panel kind of introduce themselves, and we have some pictures that some of our panelists have shared that we'll see. So if you would please just introduce yourself, and then May, as those pictures come up, why don't you talk to them?
All right. If you weren't awake, I bet you are now. All right. My name is May Lee, and I have been attending City of Light for a couple of years now, and I am mom. So I don't know if...
Yeah, can you see the pictures? So this dad.
Okay, so this is my dad. Very, okay, yes, this is a recent picture of him in uniform. If you are familiar with the Hmong at all, they were not too long ago recognized for their part in helping out with the Vietnam War. They had fought in a secret war, and this is my dad. He's a handsome guy over there. I get my good looks from him. Oh yeah, and this is our family shortly after we came to the United States, and the cute little girl, of course. We were a church-going family, and this was after church in Iowa, thus the corn.
Awesome. I think that's it.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mainza Tao, and I've actually had the honor of visiting City of Light several times in the last couple of years. You all are just an amazing church, and Pastor Brian, thank you all the time for thinking of me and inviting me in. I currently work for the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Association or Authority. Formerly, the last time I was here to speak, I was with the Hmong Chamber of Commerce. I'm Hmong American and the first in my family to be born in this country when my family came as refugees after the Vietnam War.
Awesome. Can we pass it back again? Awesome. Yep, let's go back to that last picture.
Good morning. My name is Minnie, and this is a picture of it's our first family picture in the U.S. That's me on that side. So I came when I was 9, and that was all the way back in 1979. So we've been here about 41 years, and I grew up in a Pentecostal family. This is my daughter, actually. So she's 21. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Maggie, please, and then
Hi everyone, my name is Maggie. I am half Filipino and then Swiss and Scottish. So my perspective might be a little different too from the rest of this panel here too. But this is my family, so that's my mom and my dad. This is an old picture of me and my cousin Michael and Ruby. I just lived in the Philippines for a family reunion, so this is just a picture up top from one of our family gatherings. And this was Thanksgiving a couple years ago. So, yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paul Vang. This is my first time here at City of Light Church, so thank you for having me. I am Hmong and Chinese. Hmong on my dad's side and Chinese on my mom's side. And I wish I provided a picture here, but the story about how my parents met was my dad was here in the United States. He already had resettled, he was a citizen, and him and my mother were pen pals. My mom was still in China at the time. So they wrote to each other under the initial guise of being pen pals and practicing English. And over time, that kind of blossomed into a relationship. And so fast forward, and here I am today.
As a matter of fact, let's show, it's about a 2-minute video on the Hmong experience and the
During the Vietnam War, the United States Central Intelligence Agency recruited the Hmong to fight against the impending Communist Army. The Hmong were trained in guerrilla warfare and were led by Major General Von Powell. Their main objectives were to first block the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which was the main supply route for the North Vietnamese, and engage the communist armies. Secondly, to rescue American pilots who had been shot down. And third, to defend the radar stations such as Pupaki. In May of During the Vietnam War, the United States Central Intelligence Agency recruited the Hmong to fight against the impending Communist Army. The Hmong were trained in guerrilla warfare and were led by Major General Van Powell. Their main objectives were to first block the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which was the main supply route for the North Vietnamese, and engage the Communist armies. Secondly, to rescue American pilots who had been shot down. And third, to defend the radar stations such as Pupati. In May of 1975, following the collapse of Vietnam and Cambodia, the North Vietnamese Army, allied with the Pathet Lao, overthrew the existing government of Laos. Major General Van Powell and many of his staff were flown to safety, but the rest of the Hmong were left to fend for themselves. Most of them were still on the battlefield.
When somebody is trying to chase you out from your land or to invade your country, even it's necessary for you to fight to the last man.
The Hmong were then targeted by the Pathet Lao for genocide, extermination to the root. Many were killed or forced into labor camps for re-education, never to be seen again. Others took to the mountains where they continued to fight. However, the North Vietnamese army bombed and gassed the Hmong from the air. Many of the Hmong people then attempted the difficult journey to seek refuge in Thailand. They traveled under the cover of darkness, bringing only with them the clothes on their backs. The Hmong lucky enough to make it to Thailand were put into refugee camps until resettlement to third countries. Today, the Hmong are more dispersed than ever. Many have settled in the United States, Australia, Europe, and South America, where they continue to preserve their culture, language, and customs.
We were this group of people who have always been displaced from place to place, and now we're in this country, and this is probably the first time in our history where we have the greatest opportunity to have equality like everyone else.
All right, thanks very much.
During the Vietnam
So we know that it's important for any culture, any background, any ethnicity to know history in order to be able to grasp what the future can be as well. So what we want to do is we just want to take a brief moment to do an activity, right? And this activity, as we consider what identity is to us, right? It's an activity that basically says, I am this, but not this. Because we have a diverse audience, we want to be able to let them know what we consider our identity is. Is that all right? Awesome. So we have 4 markers and 4 boards here. I'm just going to pass that back. Marker. And then marker. So we're just going to take a few moments and maybe give us 2 things that you say you are, and then 2 things that you say that you are not. And when you're ready, you know I'll put it up on the So in considering society, what is it that you would want us to know as it relates to who you are as an identity? I envy some of your handwriting. Mac, go with yours. Yeah. So, second. Awesome. Okay. So, Maggie, explain to us the two things that you say that you are and the two things that you say that you are. Why that's important.
Yeah. So I'm glad that Paul also wrote the first one I had here. I am Asian American, but I'm not incomplete. And for me, being biracial, that's always been a bit of a traumatic piece almost for me. Growing up, knowing I'm never fully Asian or I'm never fully white, so what am I and can I be accepted in either of those spaces, right? And am I allowed to feel worthy and accepted, and am I able to really, truly belong to this community and say I'm from this community, even if it's not all of my blood, right? And for the second one, yeah, I am hospitable and sometimes reserved, but I'm not voiceless. I am part of a book club, Asian American Book Club, and we've been talking about this idea of how do we raise our voice as Asian Americans? How do we find it? How do we identify it? And what do we do about it, right? About things like injustice in our country, and things in the family. And how do we handle that and still use our voice for the right reasons? So, even if I don't speak up about some things in your company, or I just haven't had a chance to be invited into a conversation, that doesn't mean I don't have an opinion. It doesn't mean I don't care. It's just about thinking about leaving space for us to have a voice, right, for the rest of the community. Asking, where is the Asian voice in this? What are we missing? What is your perspective? And just inviting us and continuing to invite us more than once into those conversations.
That's good. All right, thanks, Maggie. All right, who wants to go next? All right, Benny. All right, do maybe two of each, and I'll move this back. So, I am.
So basically, I said I am an American, but I'm not a feather or dot Indian. I know I got that a lot, like growing up and stuff. Like people would always ask me, like, are you the feather or are you the dot? And I'm technically neither. So Indians that wear the dot, they're Hindus, and I'm Christian. So just growing up, I had a lot of that like commentary. So yeah.
Good.
And then I'm soft-spoken, but I'm not submissive. I tend to raise my voice in things that really resonate with me, and so when people think that I'm quiet about certain things, they think that I'm being submissive, but usually I just take myself out of that conversation and just let it be.
I am a meat eater. I am not a cow worshiper. I get that a lot, even in like church. I had one time at a missions conference, they were passing out the ground meat, and the lady just skipped me. And I said, wait. And she goes, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you don't eat meat. So people just assume by looking at me, you know, and I'm from South India, and I grew up Pentecostal, and we ate a lot of meat. So it's, South Indians do eat meat, and St. Thomas came to India, and that's how my great-grandparents became Christians. So my last name is Samuel. If you ever meet an Indian person with the last name Samuel, Matthew, Thomas, you know that they're Christians because they're from the south part of India, which is Kerala. So that's how we became Christians. So yes, I don't worship cows, and I eat meat, and I don't do yoga either. I'm not flexible.
Thanks so much.
Excuse my handwriting, I was a former teacher before this, so I'm used to writing kind of fast. I am a child of immigrant and refugees, and I use this as an identifier because that shapes a lot of what happens at home. So my parents, being refugees and immigrants, they were shaped by the experience of having to leave home for different circumstances. So my father having to leave home because of the secret war and the events that happened after the secret war that was noted in that documentary. For a lot of Hmong folks, leaving home was a traumatic experience that involved fleeing violence, that involved being separated from family. So that shaped my father's experience, and when he came to the United States, that just doesn't go away. You live with that. That's trauma that you have to process. For my mother, she was an immigrant who came under a little bit better circumstances, but still, she was still leaving China for other reasons. So I am a child of refugees and immigrants for that reason. I also put I'm Asian American. There's this identity tightrope that Asians have to navigate, where we're not quite Asian enough for our parents and our older family members, but we're also not quite American enough for the kids that we go to school with and for the people we interact with. So we exist in this space of Asian American where we're both. So that's an identity that I have inside myself. Some things that I'm not a stereotype. I think that's self-explanatory. And then I'm also, and this is for me and my community, we're not a monolith. So as Pastor Brian mentioned earlier, the Asian American community is incredibly diverse. Even within my own identity, I carry two different identities culturally. And that's not counting other identity markers as well. So no individual is a monolith, and my community is not monolithic either. So thank you.
So one of the things I said was that I am Hmong and Asian American, but I am not just Hmong and Asian American. And I say that because especially in this day and age of diversity and inclusion, Asian Americans are oftentimes very invisible or left behind. And even here locally with some friends who are Asian American, you know, we've had conversations about how do we raise that visibility of Asian Americans. But then what we get in response oftentimes is, well, Asian Americans are so successful already, you know, or I had this online conversation that went really bad with somebody, but you know, they were like, well, Asians only look after themselves, right? They're not a part of a bigger community, and that's just not true. So that's why I said we're not just our own ethnicity or Asian American, we're part of a bigger community. The other thing I said is that I am a uniter and not a divider. Again, the same concept of just because I'm Asian American and I am trying to fight for resources or visibility for my Asian American community, it's not to divide, it's not to take away from others. It's to add to the whole of the bigger picture of our community.
Okay, so I'm Hmong American, and I'm not white or Chinese. And there's a story behind this, okay? So you saw my picture. We came to the United States when I was 3, so I don't remember anything from the travels of what my parents had to go through, but I do know the stories of what they went through. And my parents literally did escape from Laos with nothing but the shirt on their back, and if they were lucky, shoes on their feet. And my mom was actually pregnant with me while they were on the run. So as they left Laos, there was just so much fear of being caught, fear of being, spotted by the communists, that they really feared little kids because we would cry, right? And so while on the run, my mom was pregnant with me, and they were with a group of my dad's family. And during one part of their journey, my dad had witnessed that his nephew get his face blown off right in front of my dad. So those were real fears. When my mom was going to go into labor with me, my dad's family said, well, you're not going to have the kid here, are you? Because if you have the kid here, that kid's going to cry and we'll probably all die. So my dad journeyed with my mom for a mile or 2. He said he didn't know where he was going. But they found a barn, and I was born in a manger. It's true. Some days people would say I was born in a barn, but I like to think I was born in a manger. So we came here when I was real young, and when we got here, we were in a predominantly white community. There were like 5 Hmong families, and I didn't have any Hmong kids at my school. So I grew up thinking I was white. I know, we laugh now, right? But that's like the beauty of children, I think, that we just don't see color. We don't see that stuff. And so it wasn't until I was in 6th grade when a little boy kept teasing me, and he said I was Chinese. And I was like, why is this boy calling me Chinese? I'm like white, like everybody else. But my parents spoke Hmong at home, so I didn't make that connection. I don't know. Honestly, not one of the smarter Asians. But anyway, so I had to realize growing up, like really truly accepting my identity as a Hmong American, and not like, and actually realizing like I wasn't white like everybody else, and that was really hard for me. And then realizing that I wasn't Chinese either. So there's that story. And then I put that I'm a child of God, and I'm not different from you.
So in talking through our experience now in the United States, right? What are some challenges that you all have experienced in being Asian American?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, for me, I grew up, most of my childhood spent with Filipino community, and then I was 10 and I moved to the suburbs of Minneapolis, and that was a very white cultured, sort of what May had grown up in. And so in navigating white culture, I found that sometimes, my friends or other people would get upset with me because I couldn't make an individualistic decision on something, even as far as, where do you want to go out to eat? And I'd be like, oh, well, I like these things, but what do you guys want to eat? And they'd always be like, hey, why can't you just make a decision? And I'm like, well, it's because I'm used to making decisions as a group with the people around me, and we come to, a unanimous or a sort of unanimous, decision. And I didn't understand that that mindset was because of my, my Asian American side coming through. Like, oh yeah, that's why it hurts so much for me to just make a solo decision and say we're going to that. Like, that's it, and being that direct. And so I think it took some time to process these little things that you don't think about until you get older and you start doing more digging into your identity and what makes your identity. At least for me, I found.
That's good. Thanks.
I think going back to kind of the I am not this, the biggest challenge for me right now as an Asian American is really just, Milwaukee is amazing. We have such amazing people. And I think we've done really well in the last several years of bringing different communities together. And I say all of this because I think I've gotten comfortable knowing that this is my Milwaukee. Like, I've got all these great people in my life. But outside of that, that's not how it is. There is still this misperception or belief that, again, Asian Americans are so much more successful than other communities of color, and they're only watching out for themselves, and that really that's a pain point for me, because there are so many of us, not just Asian Americans, but so many of us who work so hard to bring different communities together and to belong to more than just our one community. And that continues to really just hurt my heart a lot, because we have such amazing folks who really do amazing things, in terms of reaching across different communities, different aisles, and yet there is still this belief that Asian Americans, are so successful and they don't care about anybody else.
I think my biggest struggle moving to the U.S., I moved to New York when I was 9. I did not speak a word of English, and New York was this, huge melting pot. There were a lot of people coming into. So my entire classroom were full of people that did not speak English. So we did not know how to communicate with each other. But then there were also, the whites and who made fun of us. So I think as a child growing up not knowing English, most Asian Americans wanted their kids to succeed. Of course, my parents wanted me to be in the medical field. I did not choose that path, so I wanted to go into business. I wanted to do my MBA, and everyone talked me out of it. People will see you as this little Indian girl. What do you mean you want to be in a business? And so I dropped out of business school and I went and got my degree in health administration. And after Ashley was born, I went into real estate and I opened up my own business. So now I'm a business owner, I own my own franchise. So even in my own culture, even in the family, they tell you, you're not American, what are you? You should be a doctor, you should be an engineer. And I don't even know how to add. I'm this, I hate math. It's just so weird how math just did not stay in my brain. So anyway, but growing up, that was the hardest part. People looking at you and saying, oh, what is this, curry thing? Now curry is all in, it's just, everything Indian is in, curry and Cuban, and I think even Hollywood, is adding, Asian actresses. So India is like this thing that's in, but when we moved to the U.S., we would wear sandals and people would make fun of us. What's that on your feet? So it's just, and then growing up and not knowing, okay, am I Indian, am I American? Because my parents were super strict. Being Pentecostal, we could not hang out with people. The church was pure 100% Indian Pentecostal church. They did not want us to mingle with anybody else. So no dating. I had an arranged marriage which lasted 17 years, and I got out of it. And then I was ostracized from the community because now you got hate divorce. So I went through so much coming to the U.S. not knowing English and then wanting to be American. What am I? I was coconut, brown things outside, but wanting to be white on the outside, but wanted to be white on the inside. It was a constant struggle because I was always fighting against the culture. This is not right, this is not biblical. I couldn't wear jewelry, I couldn't wear makeup, I couldn't wear pants going to church. And then, after the divorce, it's like I found my identity, I found my freedom, and I know whose child I am. I'm not this, dark-skinned Indian girl that no one thought, was unattractive or whatever. And raising my children was difficult because I still had that Indian, thought process. Okay, no going out with friends, but I think I was more strict with my oldest daughter than Ashley. When Ashley came around, she fought. She's like, I'm not doing this. And so it was this constant struggle with, parents telling you, where's your daughter? It's 10 o'clock, she should be home. So it was just, and I know she struggled too, so I'll hand it over to her.
Yeah, that was a good beginning of what I went through. But basically, growing up Indian, I had both of my parents up until I was like 12, I think. And so that was really just like a pivotal moment because I was I was growing into a teenager and my family had just broken up and stuff. And we were the first Indian family in our community to get divorced. So it was like this monumental thing, and I really didn't see it as that big of a deal, but the way that it was blown up kind of made me think about it twice. But growing up, growing up Indian, everything was so strict. There were rules, whatever your dad says, that's it. You don't have any say, and that's pretty much, you just have to deal with it. But after they got divorced, it was more like I had more freedom and an ability to speak up for what I wanted. But being in school and stuff, it's weird because you grow up being Indian and you're able to you eat food with your hands. You do so much with your hands, and then when you go to school, it's I have to use a fork now. And people look at you kind of weird if you end up eating with your hands. I remember so much in school, people would ask me so many questions about things that I just thought was normal, but it just wasn't seem normal to them because they weren't raised that way. But just stuff like that. I had a curfew. I was 17, had a curfew at 10 o'clock. People didn't understand, and I was like, this is I'm Indian, which should give you enough that you need to know. But it was definitely really hard because I wasn't really able to do just things that were seen as normal for my age, going out, just hanging out with my friends. I felt like I was only able to hang out with them maybe once a week, and then that was my 1 week pass. That was it. And there are these incredibly high standards of just getting good grades and just being, no matter what, you do good in school, regardless of anything else that's happening in your life. Doesn't matter. You have to do good in school. And just having that type of pressure made me, I feel have a hatred towards going to school. I didn't like it, and not even because of learning, but just because I was forced into making it such a big priority. With my parents being the first ones to get divorced, we were looked at as these tainted children almost, not really being invited to weddings anymore, and I had went to a all Indian church, and once I got divorced, the pastor had reached out to my mom saying that they don't want me to come to the church anymore because I don't have these together parents. And that was the only thing that I knew was going to that church. All my friends were there, and that was the only Indian community that I was really a part of. So I think after being kicked out of that, it kind of made me have a somewhat hatred towards the Indian community. But getting older and stuff, I've been able to appreciate it more and just understand the underlying background of why we do the things that we do, and trying to just break generational curses, basically.
I think for me, from my perspective, so I'm a community organizer in the Hmong Southeast Asian community, and one of the biggest challenges I see is because a lot lot of members of our community come to the United States under traumatic circumstances, under fleeing persecution. We find that, first of all, there's lacking in resettlement services. So refugee groups that come here, of course, they don't speak English, they don't have a knowledge of the way life works in the United States. So resettling here is a very, very difficult task. And thankfully, institutions like the church have taken the lead in helping with resettlement, helping with citizenship services, and helping with the English language. So I think that's really great that church has filled that role. But along with aside from just basic resettlement services, even for our own home community who's been here for over 40 years now, things like civic engagement, like voting, like the census, like just being involved in what's going on at the local, state, and national level in terms of the government politics, that's all still lacking. And I suspect for our Hmong community, and there's a couple of factors that factor into that. Part of it is that we still cling on to a lot of our cultural practices when it comes to how to navigate politics, how to navigate family issues within the larger clan system. So that's still an issue. Another issue is educational attainment. So what we find is that the more members of our community achieve more higher levels of education, the more they are likely to be politically involved, more civically engaged. But still, even for our Hmong community, levels of educational attainment are still quite low. So that's something that we're also pushing up against. And then, really, to build off of what Mainza said earlier, because Mainza's fighting this battle where she's trying to bring more visibility for our Asian community in outside communities. I see my battle as a community organizer as helping rally my own community so that they can see how their self-interest, how their community needs are related to the outside picture. So those are some of the bigger challenges. Those are some of the bigger challenges that I see for not just the Hmong community, but newer refugee groups that are coming in post-2010 and beyond, who are facing this new political landscape at the national level. So.
Great, thank you so much. Now, as we go into this last question, one of the drivers behind the series is to determine how we as a larger, diverse body can be allies, to each community that we're focusing on. So, as the last question, how can we as a diverse body, Paul, as you mentioned, being able to have those connections where the outside community is important as well, how can we be allies for those that are outside of the region?
Well, frankly, I have a story that I'd like to tell, and so I'm just going to try to bridge it with your question. So a story that I want to share is, as it relates to trying to bridge a gap or be allies with our community, has to do with kind of going back to my dad and our journey to America. And one of the things that kept coming to my mind as we were singing the song Waymaker, I was really reminded of just how God is truly a promise keeper and that He is truly a way maker. As we were trying to, glory to God, because as we were coming, trying to make the journey here, my dad and uncles, they at some point realized that they needed to separate from the women and children because every time the men were with the group, people were getting killed. And they thought that if they could separate, that maybe the women and children might be captured, but the men would be killed. So my dad did get captured, and he said it was extremely hopeless. He tried to beg the person in charge to let him go, that he had a family, but it was to no avail. So he said he understood a little bit of their language, and he heard one of the men in charge tell one of the soldiers to take my dad out into the field and kill him. I brought tissue because I'm getting emotional. So this is a pivotal moment for my dad.
said he was walked into the field with this man with a weapon, and he heard a voice call out to him and say, "I am the creator of this world. And if you would follow me, I will save you from this situation." Now, we were in the hills of Laos. We've never heard of church or God or Christ or the creator of the world. So this was my dad hearing this voice. And as he kneeled down at the order of the soldier, the weapon was pointed at him from behind. And he closed his eyes and he promised this creator, who he didn't know, that if he survived this, that whoever this creator was, he would always follow him, and that his whole family would follow him. And so my dad said, I was waiting and waiting, and then I opened up my eyes, and the soldier was gone. So I share that story because the question is, how can we be allies with our greater community, right? My job as an attorney is I work with a lot of individuals who don't have a lot of hope, who come from very broken families, who come from poverty, who come from places where they think they can never be anybody. And the way that I see myself as becoming an ally with individuals that I encounter every day is to tell them a piece of my story, that I'm not what you might think I am. You know, oftentimes people are like, oh, attorney, wow. You know, you must be like from a successful family, doctors and lawyers, all that stuff. No, that's my family story. We barely made it alive. And I think through the grace of God, the decision that my dad made that day to say, God, I will surrender to you. I don't know who you are, but I will surrender to you. It was sort of like my dad planting a seed of mercy where God said, whatever your family does, they will prosper. Because trust me, I've been a black sheep, and God just keeps drawing me in. And so I tell my clients, I tell the people that I encounter that no matter where you've been, where you are now, where you are going does not have to be where you used to be. And that's how I find myself today.
So, in the broader community, how can you galvanize engagement?
I just want to quickly share too. So I've often told people that I married into Milwaukee. So I'm from Minnesota. My husband's from here. And when I first moved here, almost 14 years ago, I hated Milwaukee. And hate is a strong word, but I hated Milwaukee. The tension in the air. I had no idea, like, this is truly like, blindly following love. I had no idea that, Milwaukee was one of the most segregated cities in the nation. I honestly had no clue. And I moved in, and I feel this tension in the air, and I'm like, what is going on here? Like, nobody talked to nobody. Even the home community was so isolated. You couldn't even find the home folks like May and I were talking about. And it was so hard to break into any community here. Because I think folks here in Milwaukee, you grow up together and it's like this small town mentality in a big city. And so there's not room to accept newcomers. So I hated Milwaukee for many, many years until I finally found a community. And it started with, not even from my own community, but it started with two African American women, sisters now, who I just love. Like, they saw something in me, I saw something in them, like I want to learn from them. And they embraced me as friends and sisters. You know, and I think that's what we all need to do for each other, is we help lift each other up. It was sad, and sometimes I still feel sad that even in my own community, the Hmong community, I don't have that sort of relationship, and that relationship is with the African American community or other fellow Asian American community members who care about me and who continue to lift me up. But that's not what I do for others, and I don't do it just for my Hmong community or other Asian Americans. It's for everyone, and I think that's all it is let's just love each other and be kind and compassionate towards each other.
It's over. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I was just going to say, what we're doing here, this, multi-ethnicity is my blood, and that's what drew me to this church, because it was one of the core values of this church. So churches, churches, preachers, pastors, people in leadership make spaces where you can have these kind of conversations, create those spaces, invite people multiple times to things like this. Welcome the stranger into your home. And if you can't welcome them to your home just yet, do something small. Get lunch with a coworker. Invite someone who you wouldn't normally invite, maybe to your birthday party or to church even, or to a networking event, whatever it may be, and just say, I want to get to know your story, and start there. Right? That's how any good friendship starts. Start there. It's not hard. It's not hard to be a good human, right? So, be good to each other. That's
it. We're close with this. Right before we close, why don't we thank God for our panel? Amazing. Jesus, as he was praying to the Father just before he would be crucified in John 17, and we know that if we have just a short time to live, whatever we're going to say, whatever we're going to pray is going to be important. Yeah. And he was speaking to the Father, and he was praying for his disciples, but not just his immediate disciples, but he said for all of those that would follow after him. And his prayer was that we would be one. His prayer was that not only his disciples immediately, but for all of those that would follow, that we would be one, so that the world will know that the Father sent Jesus. And it's important, it's easy. That oneness, we understand, is not just under the umbrella of being Christian believers. Because if we're honest about it, our nation's history has done and has seen some pretty horrendous things under the guise of individuals being Christians. So the heart that Jesus was praying out of was that we as neighbors, as individuals that would honor God, would set the bar for what love looks like in our world. And I want us to just take a moment to pray. And in that prayer, because many times you find that, when there are situations that take place that people are, I'm going to pray for you. And that's important because we know that prayer moves mountains. But also we know that prayer empowers us to have the tools that we need many times to move those mountains as well. So let's pray today as a body of believers, from our Asian community to all of the communities that are represented here today. Let's pray that God would give us that power just like he gave those 120 believers at the day of Pentecost. That he would empower us to be witnesses for him. That he would empower us to be followers that set the bar for love in Milwaukee and in beyond. Is that all right? Yeah. Amen. Well, why don't we just stand as a church family? Why don't we just stand as a church family? Father, we thank you right now. Father, we thank you. We bless you. God, we thank you that your heart is for us as the body of Christ to be one. We thank you that although all of us, as represented in the body, we might not be the head, or we might not be the arm, or we might not be the leg, but whatever we are, God, we know that it is significant, it's important, and it has a plan and a place in your heart for the world. So, Father, we pray for the Asian community.